So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! Going into day 2 of the NFL's free agency process, the Detroit Lions still have a lot of needs that can be addressed. And based off of years past, there's a very high probability that Barrett Holmes will in some way address these needs. There are very few times where Brad Holmes goes into the draft with a clear need at a position, as he typically ends up filling those out throughout free agency, allowing him to draft the best player available at any given pick or any given draft position. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that every player signed in free agency is going to be a starter or a big time player or a long term solution. Sometimes those players are just band aid players. They're players that are going to be there for a year to fill a role until they can draft the future successor. But very few times does Brad Holmes actually truly go into the NFL draft hindered by draft need, as opposed to taking the best player available. It's what allowed him to draft Jahmyr Gibbs last year at 12. It what allowed him to draft Jack Campbell in the first round. It's what allowed him to draft Sam Laporta with the 3rd pick in the 2nd round of the NFL draft. The best player available typically helps the Detroit Lions more than forcing a pick due to positional need. So most times, Brad Holmes ends up filling needs through free agency so he can take the best guy in the draft. With that being said, the Detroit Lions still have quite a few needs going through free agency. And as we get into day 2, the phases of free agency where Brad Holmes truly seems to thrive, I think we're going to see quite a few names come off the board for the Lions. I think we're going to see this roster get filled out pretty well over the next couple of days. Now, the Detroit Lions, as of today, according to Over the Cap, have just under $34 million left to spend after Carlton Davis's trade, as well as Marcus Davenport's addition to the roster. And with that $33 million, about 10 of that is going to go into the draft class, meaning that the Detroit Lions have about $23 million to spend, assuming nothing gets reworked and assuming nothing gets redone from a contract standpoint. So with that being said, the Detroit Lions have a couple of needs. Defensive tackle, I think, is the biggest one, as is cornerback, despite having Mosley Sutton and now Carlton Davis all locked up for next season. I think the Lions could potentially look to get one more free agent, whether that be kind of a younger or less experienced player, as well as potentially drafting somebody in the NFL draft. I think they're going to try to get 5 corners deep, as last year they really struggled with cornerback depth and talent. Emmanuel Mosley is nothing that, you can be guaranteed about. Obviously, you have Cam Sutton, who struggled last year. So Carlton Davis seems to be cornerback 1, but having more depth and having as much talent as possible would leave the Lions with the best position possible. I think wide receiver is a big need for the Lions, especially considering both Josh Reynolds and Donovan Peoples-Jones have yet to be re-signed. Safety is a need considering C.J. Gardner-Johnson is yet to re-sign and Tracy Walker was recently cut. Edge rusher, despite the Marcus Davenport deal, I think could still be arranged with, of course, Romeo Okwara, Julian Okwara, and Charles Harris not returning to the roster, as well as guard after the departure of Jonah Jackson, who signed yesterday with the Rams for a 3-year deal worth $17 million a season. So with that being said, I picked one player from each position I think the Lions could very well be interested in. And today we're going to take a look at each and every one of those players and hopefully get it out before a move is made. So starting off with the defensive tackle, the easy option here is DJ Reader, right? The 29-year-old defensive tackle from Cincinnati has 9.5 career sacks, 23.5 career tackles for loss, and is easily the number 1 nose tackle in this draft. Is he going to be an elite pass rusher? No. But will he bring an element of the run defense to the Detroit Lions paired up with Aleem McNeil that will potentially give them the best run-stopping front in the NFL? I think that potentially he would. And I think DJ Reader could potentially only cost between $10 to $11 million, which wouldn't end up breaking the bank. And considering Christian Wilkins just got 20, DJ Reader on an 11 or 12-year deal, even if it's for a year or two, could be a really really nice addition. Now, there is a chance that the Lions really like the progression of Broderick Martin, their third round pick from last year, and end up going with a smaller defensive tackle or a smaller named nose tackle that will cost them more in the realm of $5 to $6 million. But I think DJ Reader is a player the Lions really want to have. There's been a lot of rumors that he's been a player the Lions have a lot of interest in. I think if they're going to make a big splashy signing, I think it will be DJ Reader, who is the number one nose tackle left on the market. Now, taking a look at some of the more flashier positions, obviously cornerback is one that the Lions have already addressed, right? Cornerback, they traded a third round pick for Carlton Davis to come in and be the cornerback one. Cam Sutton's getting paid $11 million to likely be the cornerback two. Emmanuel Mosley was brought in to likely be the cornerback three. And Brian Branch, of course, is your starting nickel and slot cornerback. But after that, it still gets really, really thin, right? The Lions lost 4 to 5 defensive backs this year with Will Harris, with Jerry Jacobs, with Khalil Dorsey, with Kendall Vilder, all of the cornerback position. You're going to need to probably sign and draft 2 guys to replace those players. Now, Emmanuel Mosley and Carlton Davis are 2 additions already to the secondary that weren't available last year. If the Lions still draft a cornerback, they still have room for one more signing. And I think that Christian Fulton would be the perfect player for that. On Spot Track right now, he's projected to have a $6.7 to $7 million value on the market, and a cornerback for the Tennessee Titans that is still very young, not even 27 years old yet, has made 37 starts, 4 career INTs, 25 career passes defended, 2 career tackles for loss, and 150 tackles. He is young, he's physical, he can tackle, he's athletic, he's got long speed, he's got length, and for $7 million to come in and be a cornerback, potentially 2, 3, or 4, that would make the Lions secondary one of, in my opinion, the deepest secondaries in the NFL at the cornerback room for guys that legitimately have starting experience across multiple seasons in the NFL. And then you go out and you draft a guy, whether that be in the first round and really try to get a star for your cornerback one and your elite all-pro player, or you wait till day 2 or day 3. You get a developmental guy. You get a project who can sit behind Carlton Davis, that can sit behind Christian Fulton and Emmanuel Mosley and Cam Sutton. And you get a player that can develop more of a long-term, but I think Christian Fulton is the right combination of age and skill set and ability and talent and price that I think he could be a very, very favorable option. It seems as though he's going to be a cheaper market option for a player that can still start in the NFL and still be a really, really talented football player. Moving on to the next position of need, I think DJ Chark is very much in play for the Lions at wide receiver, a free agent that left Detroit just an offseason ago and went to Carolina, where in a very, very poor offense, being really the only true weapon on that offense, he put up 15 yards per reception, had 525 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns. He averaged just under 15 yards per reception with the Carolina Panthers last year. But in his final season with Detroit, he averaged 16.7 yards per reception, a feat that was, I believe, the second highest in his career, where he saw over 500 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns while struggling with some injuries in Detroit. The Lions did try to re-sign him last offseason, although he did go to the Carolina Panthers for about a $10 to $12 million contract a season. I think DJ Chark could very much return to the Detroit Lions on a $10 million contract, be the X wide receiver. He already has chemistry with Jared Goff, already has that deep ball connection, and I think a wide receiving core of DJ Chark, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Khalif Raymond, Antoine Green, and potentially either Josh Reynolds returning or getting a rookie in the draft could make for a really good wide receiving core. And of course, pairing that with Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery and that offensive line, DJ Chark would fit in right as he did before, and I think he'd pick up right where he left off, averaging almost 17 yards per reception, giving that deep element of the passing game back and giving a big, physical, fast wide receiver to stretch the field and be the true X. The Lions don't really have a true X right now, and I think they've been looking for it ever since day one of the Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell era. Safety, I don't think there's a better option on the market. I don't think there's going to be a better fit. I don't think there's going to be a better price than CD Deuce of the Detroit Lions. He played 5 games for the Lions last year, came away with 2 interceptions, had 17 tackles in his 3 regular season games, as well as 3 passes defended in those regular season games. He brings a lot of energy. He brings a lot of aura. And after being injured last season, I think the price tag for him is going to be even cheaper than last year when he signed a 1-year, $8 million contract. And the Lions can get him for 6, 7, even a repeat of $8 million on another prove it deal. He knows the system. He knows the secondary. He's going to make the secondary more improved, and he's going to make the secondary better. I think him with Ifeatu Melifonwu and Kirby Joseph is a great safety trio. You draft one to make it a quadruplet after, of course, Tracy Walker was gone, and you run it back with a really good trio of safeties that really made up the bulk of your impressive secondary last year. Right? The Detroit Lions didn't have a great cornerback room, but they did have a great safety room. Ifeatu Melifonwu was great for them. Kirby Joseph was great for them. CD Deuce was great for them. They combined for 8 interceptions across that trio last year, and I think bringing it back, running it back with that safety trio and bringing somebody in on day 3, day 2 of the NFL draft would make the secondary really, really complete. And then you have to take a look at the edge rusher position. Despite signing Marcus Davenport to a decently sized 1-year contract yesterday, the Lions still have to make some moves in the edge rushing department. Only having 4 guys on roster through next season, DJ Wanham from the Vikings, another Viking pass rusher, I think could be really good. Played 15 games for the Minnesota Vikings last year and has had a pretty clean bill of health over his career. He had 8 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, 15 quarterback hits, and 6 passes defended, as well as a fumble recovery brought back for a touchdown. Again, he is not going to be an elite playmaker. He's not going to be a 10, 12, 14 sack kind of player. But if he can repeat 8 sacks on a 10, even $11 million contract, he can be the running mate to Aiden Hutchinson. And we saw how much he helped Neil Hunter last year, who I believe led the NFL or was very top of the NFL in sack production a season ago. If DJ Wanham comes in on a 1-2-year contract for $10, $12 million a season, that gives Aiden Hutchinson a running mate. That gives Aiden Hutchinson a pass rushing partner. And we just saw how effective he could be at releasing Danielle Hunter. I think the effect could be even more dramatic with Aiden Hutchinson alongside him. And then, of course, the last player we're going to talk about is the guard position. After letting Jonah Jackson walk yesterday, guard is very much a position of need for the Lions. And I think Kevin Zeitler from the Baltimore Ravens could be a massive player for them. 34 years old, so definitely on the older side, but still playing at a really high level in the NFL. If he does return for his next season of football, last year played 982 snaps for the Ravens, was very healthy, 2 sacks allowed, 4 penalties, and a 69.3 PFF grade. I think he would plug in very easily to replace Jonah Jackson. And I think for a 1-year Band-Aid type of deal for a Super Bowl run, you could get a player like Kevin Zeitler and feel really good about your offensive line going Taylor Decker, Kevin Zeitler, Frank Ragnow, Graham Glasgow, and of course Penei Sewell on the right side of the line while you continue to develop guys like Colby Sorsdale, while you continue to develop the depth on this roster and build it up through the draft. Kevin Zeitler is a really good 1-year player that could improve the Lions' offensive line immediately, as well as mentoring some of the young guys, again, like Colby Sorsdale and Coyote Awaska for the future of this franchise. So with all of that being said, those are my targets. Those are my top targets for each position for the Detroit Lions going through the draft. Will they sign all of them? Obviously not. They don't quite have the money for that. I assume they're going to maybe sign one of them and potentially get some younger or some cheaper guys at other positions of need. But I do think some of these guys are in play. I do think DJ Chark is very much in play. I do think that DJ Reader is more than in play. I think there's a high likelihood that he becomes a Detroit Lion, and there's a high likelihood that the Lions offer him a contract. I think cornerback is still in play. I think guard is very much in play, as there is a massive need there right now with Jonah Jackson's departure. And I think there's a lot of good talent still out there, despite day 1 of free agency being a spending spree for a lot of teams. There's a lot of talent left. I think Brad Holmes really thrives in day 2 and 3, phases 2 and 3 of the free agency market, where he can make proper deals, where he can not overpay, but still get some solid talent. I think this is how the draft, or I think this is how free agency will eventually work out. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Let me know down in the comments below what you want to see, what free agency you want to see more than any other joining the Lions. Very curious to hear your guys' opinions. With all of that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so very much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions.